Hello? There we go. Hey, it's Ray Langley, at your service. How is everyone today? It's so good to see you all. Apologies for the delayed start. I make no excuses. Simply put, despite my best efforts from, despite the best efforts from myself and my manager, and even my other mod, simply put, I missed my alarm and I overslept. I sincerely apologize to all the Rainiacs and Langsters who were left waiting. I promise this will not happen again. But this is why I always sign off with get good rest, because what happens when you don't get good rest, your body will force you to. And you will miss your alarm, you will miss several phone calls, and you will worry everyone. And I apologize. But that said, I still am going to stream for the rest of my time slot today. And I think today was going to be a bit of a shorter stream anyway. But in any case, I bring to you a theme for this month, which is reading the various myths and folklores of the Native American tribes from the indigenous people that live here and over here in the United States. I wanted to spotlight these myths and folklores because, well, it's November, and November is typically known here for the Thanksgiving holiday. But aside very scant or very prettied up tellings of, the pilgrims fled from England and arrived here and met the Native Americans and Thanksgiving, and they don't really talk about anything else. And not a lot of attention is paid to the Native Americans. A lot of knowledge goes around about the pilgrims and the various foundings of the cities here, and I think that that's a little unbalanced. So I am starting off this month's theme with the Abenaki tribe. And of course, if there are any mispronunciations that I make, please understand that I am doing my best. And if you spot one, just kindly point it out in a comment, and that I will do my best to give everything its proper respect and its proper pronunciation and all that. But yeah, so the Abenaki tribe is the indigenous people that is stated to have met the pilgrims. They're the ones that the pilgrims first made contact with, and according to the Wikipedia article about them, they lived in the northeast of Canada and the United States. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can read about them on their Wikipedia page. I don't want to spend the time just reading Wikipedia at you, but the page about them is actually pretty well, pretty well filled, and of obviously the sources that are cited are also worth looking into. What I do know is that an Abenaki chief, we call it, is one of the first people to have encountered the pilgrims, and his name was Samoset, and he's notable because what do you call it? Samoset was recorded as um, not only the first one to make contact with the Pilgrims at Plymouth colony, but on March 16th, 1621, this is a date that is noted often about him. He walked into Plymouth colony and greeted the pilgrims in perfect English, saying, "Welcome, Englishmen," and then asked for a drink. Asked like for if they had beer with them. And I think that is hilarious and a wonderful flex, because imagine that a group of uh, people, uh, show up to essentially your house, and they come from quite a far away place, and they're speaking a language that supposedly you might not know, and then you just walk up to them and in perfect like use of their language you greet them. It's so cool. But yeah. So we're gonna start off with I'm reading these myths from, I'm gonna send this page right here. This is from the um this is archived, as in it's saved to the Wayback Machine. Uh the it it's not a site that exists anymore, I believe, but it has been archived so that people can still access it. There you go. And that's where I have my current list of Abenaki uh, myths and folklores, and there's other tribes listed there. We'll be covering those as well. Um, Obviously, I won't have time to read every single legend and every single tribe, but I'm going to do my best to read a few at least. So, we're going to start off probably with the most fitting, with the Abenaki creation myth. Creation story and the importance of dreaming, an Abenaki legend. The Great Spirit, in a time not known to us, looked about and saw nothing. No colors, no beauty. Time was silent in darkness. There was no sound. Nothing could be seen or felt. The Great Spirit decided to fill this space with light and life. From his great power, he commanded the sparks of creation. He ordered Toba, the great turtle, to come from the waters and become the land. The Great Spirit molded the mountains and the valleys on Turtle's back. He put white clouds into the blue skies. He was very happy. He said, "Everything is ready now. I will fill this place with the happy movement of life." He thought and thought about what kind of creatures he would make. Where would they live? What would they do? What would their purpose be? He wanted a perfect plan. He thought so hard that he became very tired and fell asleep. His sleep was filled with dreams of his creation. He saw strange things in his dream. He saw animals crawling on 4 legs, some on 2. Some creatures flew with wings, some swam with fins. There were plants of all colors covering the ground everywhere. Insects buzzed around, dogs barked, birds sang, and human beings called to each other. Everything seemed out of place. The Great Spirit thought he was having a bad dream. He thought, nothing could be this imperfect. When the Great Spirit awakened, he saw a beaver nibbling on a branch. He realized the world of his dream became his creation. Everything he dreamed about came true. When he saw the beaver make his home and a dam to provide a pond for his family to swim in, he then knew everything has its place and purpose in the time to come. It has been told among our people from generation to generation, we must not question our dreams. They are our creation. And that was the Abenaki folklore of their creation story and the importance of dreaming, which I think was pretty interesting. I like that it's, what do you call it? That dreams are important in the sense of the story, that what you conjure up um, by dreaming is just as important as what you think about when you're awake. Which I wonder what that means um, when you don't have a dream, or you can't remember your dream. Okay, the next one listed on this page is the Abenaki emergence myth. It says at the top there's a note. The character Cluscorbe is identified with Glooskap of the Algonquin myths. The Abenaki were Algonquin language people. The Abenaki or Wabanaki are an Algonquin people of Maine and New Brunswick. So there's a shared character here. And then the story begins. First, Manito, the Great Spirit, made Closcrubec, the Great Teacher. One day, when the sun was directly overhead, a young boy appeared to Closcrubec. He explained that he had been born when the sea had churned up a great foam, which was then heated by the sun, congealed, and came alive as a human boy. The next day, again at noon, the teacher and the boy greeted a girl. She explained that she had come from the earth, which had produced a green plant which bore her as fruit. And so Closcorbe, the wise teacher, knew that human beings came forth from the union of sea and land. The teacher gave thanks to Manito and instructed the boy and girl in everything they needed to know. Then Closcorbe went north into the forest to meditate. The man and the woman had many, many children. Unfortunately, they had so many children that they were unable to feed them all by hunting and picking wild foods. The mother was filled with grief to see her children hungry, and the father despaired. One day the mother went down to a stream, entering it sadly. As she reached the middle of the stream, her mood changed completely and she was filled with joy. A long green shoot had come out of her body between her legs. As the mother left the stream, she once again looked unhappy. Later, the father asked her what had happened during the day while he was out trying to gather food. The mother told the whole story. She then instructed the father to kill her and plant her bones in two piles. The father, understandably, was upset by this command, and he questioned the mother many times about it. Naturally, it was shocking and disturbing to think that he had to kill his wife to save his children, but she was insistent. The father immediately went to Closcober for advice. Closcober thought the story very strange, but then he prayed to Manito for guidance. Closcober then told the father that the mother was right. This was the will of Manito. So the father killed his wife and buried her bones in two piles as he was commanded to do. For 7 moons, the father stood over the pile of bones and wept. Then one morning he noticed that from one pile had sprouted tobacco, and from the other, maize. Closcober explained to the man that his wife had never really died, but that she would live forever in these 2 crops. To this day, a mother would rather die than see her children starve, and all children are still fed today by that original mother. Men like to plant in the cornfields extra fish they catch as a gift of thanks to the first mother, and a remembrance that we are all children of the union of sea and land. Oh, oh, that was a bittersweet story. Yeah, it was beautiful and sad. All right. So, the character of Kloskabet was identified with Glooskap, as it was mentioned. So this story is going to be interesting because this is titled Glooskap, the Trickster. In the old time of Glooskap's people, a poor widow and her son Tabulek lived in a wigwam by themselves at some distance from a Malasite village. Tabulek was a good lad, but awkward with the bow and arrow. He could not shoot straight if his life depended on it. He and his mother therefore had to live as best they could by trapping and fishing. With hard work they could just manage, but there was never anything left over. Now the chief of the nearby village demanded a yearly tribute of wampum from all who lived within reach of his hand. Wampum, as you know, is a kind of native money made of shells, and they used it in trading. The people feared the Malasite chief because he claimed to be a magician and threatened to put an evil spell on the people if they refused to pay. At the time of our story, the tribute was nearly due, and Tabulek and his mother had not a single piece of wampum in the lodge. In desperation, the mother took a treasured moose hide left to her by her husband and told Tabulek to go to the village and trade it for wampum. So off Tabulek went with the moose hide over his shoulder. He had not gone far when he met an old man who raised his hand and said politely, "Kwai, my son." Tabulek returned the greeting with equal politeness. "I see you have a fine moose hide here," said the old man. "I am in need of just such an article. Will you give it to me?" Tabulek was sorry to refuse, but explained to the old man he must sell the hide to get wampum for the tribute. "Listen now," the old man said coaxingly. "I'll trade you this dish of food for it." Tabulek looked at the dish and saw a tiny portion of ground cooked meal, hardly enough for a good swallow, and shook his head. The old man shrugged and said cheerfully, "Oh, very well then. but taste a little before you go." Out of politeness, Tabulek did so, and found to his surprise that it was delicious. "Have some more," offered the old man slyly. "Willingly," cried Tabulek, and went on eating. To his amazement, no matter how much he ate, and he ate a great deal, there was just as much left in the dish. He ate, and at last he had eaten all he wanted and wished to stop. Then, to his horror, he found he had to keep on eating just the same. Oh, how the old man laughed to see Tabulek try to push the dish away, at the same time grabbing the food and stuffing it into his mouth. He laughed till tears came. "Come," said the old man, gasping. "Give me the moose hide, and you may stop eating. Moreover, you may have the dish of food to keep." By this time Tabulek felt he might burst if he ate another mouthful, so he gladly gave the moose hide to the old fellow, and taking the dish of food in exchange, walked sadly home to his mother to tell her what had happened. Now I'll tell you something Tabulek did not know. The old man he had met was none other than Glooskap, in disguise. The great chief was something of a trickster, you see, and loved now and then to play jokes on his people, especially when by doing so he could help them. The next day Tabulek was sent off with another prized article, a fine bearskin. His mother bid him get a better bargain than he did the day before. However, there on the path again was the old man, holding a shabby old belt in his hand. "Will you trade this belt for that skin?" Tabulek took a firmer grip on the fine bearskin. "I should say not. I'm not such a fool as that." Instantly, the belt jumped out of the old man's hand and wrapped itself around Tabulek, squeezing him until he cried for mercy. "Take it off! Take it off!" "The belt will come off quick enough," the old man chuckled, "when I have that bearskin in my hand." So to keep from having the last breath squeezed out of him, Tabulek was obliged to trade the skin for the belt. His mother was scandalized. "You foolish boy," she scolded. "Now we have lost 2 valuable things. All that remains are these 10 muskrat pelts. Take them to the village, Tabulek, and sell them for wampum, or the chief will take our wigwam from over our very heads." Tabulek promised this time he would avoid the usual path and have nothing to do with the old man. So he took a new way through the depths of the wood and had nearly reached the village when he heard the sound of music. Despite all he could do, his feet turned toward the sound and began to dance of their own accord. He danced and could not stop, not even when he had danced up to the old man who played on a broken flute. "Stop, stop!" pleaded Tabulek. "Stop playing!" And he threw the muskrat skins at the old man's feet. 1 second, I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Okay, so where was I? Ah, yes. Um, right. Stop, stop, pleaded Tobolek. Stop playing! And he threw the muskrat skins at the old man's feet. The old man stopped playing, handed Tobolek the flute, and laughed till tears ran down his cheeks. All right, my son, he said. Go home now and cheer up. You may have made better bargains than you know. But the mother of Tobolek did not think so. A morsel of food, she wailed, a shabby old belt, and a broken flute, for all those fine skins, and see, here comes the chief for the tribute now. It was so. The chief, with a band of his braves, approached the wigwam. With worried heart, but the customary politeness, Tobolek invited the chief to enter the lodge and showed him to the highest place. Having no other food, he offered the chief the dish of food he had got from the old man. The guest looked disdainful, but tasted it, and then his expression changed. Never had he tasted anything so good. He ate, and the more he ate, the more there was. But the trouble was, he could not stop eating, even when his stomach began to hurt dreadfully. Take it away, or I shall die, the chief groaned, and Tobolek laughed. He knew just how the chief felt. I shall take it away, he said boldly, only when you promise henceforth you will demand no tribute wampum from me or from any of the people. The chief was terribly angry, but he was also in pain. He knew if he ate one more bite he would choke to death, so he gasped out, Yes, yes, anything you say. But as soon as Tobolek had removed the dish, he shouted to his braves, Seize this fellow and kill him! As the braves rushed forward, Tobolek threw down the magic belt, and quick as a striking snake, it jumped up and wound itself about the lot of them, and not one could stir a muscle. Then the chief saw he was dealing with trickery, and cast about in his mind for a better trick. Let my men go, he said, and we will make a bargain. Tell me what it is first, said Tobolek suspiciously. I have a daughter, said the chief, who never smiles, much less laughs. A spell was put upon her by Lox when she was a child. He looked at Tobolek with a sly grin. If you can cause her to laugh, I will make you my son-in-law, and you and your mother will never know want again. If you fail, however, you will die. Tobolek thought for a moment, then bravely agreed to the bargain. And the chief laughed to himself, for he knew his daughter, and he was sure Tobolek would fail, and he would be rid of him. Tobolek loosed the braves and accompanied the chief to the village. There, before all the assembled people, the Malicete presented his gloomy daughter to Tobolek. She might have been a pretty maid had not her face stretched from here to there with sulky disdain. Sitting at her feet, Tobolek began to tell a very funny story about an ant and a beaver, and the people laughed heartily, all but the chief's daughter. She just sighed and looked gloomier than ever. So Tobolek told another tale, even funnier than the first. All the people fairly shouted with laughter, but not the tiniest smile appeared on the face of the chief's daughter. In desperation, Tobolek tried standing on his head and making funny faces, but nothing was any good. He had failed. I should have been glad if you had succeeded, the chief said sourly, for a gloomy face makes a dreary wigwam. However, you have failed, and must pay the penalty. And he gave his braves the signal to kill Tobolek. As the braves advanced upon him, Tobolek snatched up the flute and began to play. At once the braves began to dance merrily, and not only the braves, but the chief himself and all the people except the chief's daughter, who still sat wrapped in gloom. How they danced! They jigged and whirled and bobbed and bounced, fat and thin, short and tall, they all skipped about, and though they gasped for breath and wept with anger, they could not stop. They were a very funny sight indeed. Suddenly, a sound was heard above the music. It was the sound of laughter. Tabulek left off playing and stared at the chief's daughter. She was laughing. She was laughing so hard she rocked back and forth and tears ran down her cheeks. When the music ceased and all collapsed on the ground, she laughed harder than ever.
Take her, gasped the chief. You've won. It's clear you're a magician, and your magic is far stronger than mine.
The people thought so too, for they made Tabulek their chief instead, and since the old chief's daughter was now as cheerful as the summer sun, Tabulek married her and they had many children. Only one thing puzzled Tabulek. Why, when he had played the flute, had the chief's daughter not danced too? But then you see, he didn't know of Glooskap's part in the affair, and Glooskap really is a great magician. Kespi Duskit, or the story ends. I like that one. I like that one a lot. That was pretty cool. Kind of, what do you call it? That felt sort of like, I don't want to like equate one thing to another, but it felt similar to the types of fairy tale or folklore, the likes of like Jack and the Beanstalk, where you make where boy makes trade of valuable thing for seemingly unvaluable thing, and it turns out to be uh, how he makes his fortune. But I like this one more because I like the rule of threes. You know how he gets three items and each of them play a part in it. Um, Bro got the village's goth girl to laugh. If you laugh, you get married challenge. Failed. uh, but yeah. All right. This one's a short one. Glooskap turns bad into good. So Glooskap is a very popular character in these stories. Actually, looking at the list, he shows up at least one more time, unless these other names for are just similar names for him. So in which case, he shows up three more times. Glooskap turns bad into good. When Glooskap came in from the sea, he was riding his canoe, which was made of stone. He ran around near what they now call St. John. He had been chasing two giant beavers. He was trying to stop them from raising any trouble. He tried to stop them right there where the reversing falls is today. He built a dam so they couldn't go up the river. But still, the beavers managed to get past Glooskap and traveled up the beautiful river, now called St. John River. Glooskap took two stones and threw them at the beavers. One stone landed a long way up the river and became Grand Falls. The other stone hit the beaver. It landed in a rocky area, which is now called Plaster Rock. To this day, you can still see the red clay on the riverbank. They say that this comes from the blood of the beaver. Glooskap often used animals who were bad to make something good. He paddled up and down this beautiful river many times. Even near Kingsclear, where Glooskap came up, long before the Maktakak Dam was built, he used the ledges to hold on to when he fell. Glooskap even left his image on those rocks. And where he left his snowshoes is where they were transformed and turned into the Snowshoe Islands. These are all sacred places. Even the little people live near the village of Kingsclear. That was a very short story, but I like I like when folklore gives origin story to landmarks and like features of the land. Like oh, this land was formed when this person stepped here, or this land was formed when this person fell here, or stuff like that. It's really it's so imaginative, and so oftentimes they make it an amusing thing too, like this, like, oh, he was chasing a beaver and he threw a rock at one, and this red clay actually comes from the beaver. I like that. Let's see. I'm gonna look up this character real quick because there's no note here. Yep, it's Glooskap again. This story is called Glooskabi and the Wind Eagle. So that must have been another like dialectical variant on his name. And like to plants in the second story. Glooskabi and the Wind Eagle. Long ago, Glooskabi lived with his grandmother, Woodchuck, in a small lodge beside the big water. One day, Glooskabi was walking around when he looked out and saw some ducks in the bay. "I think it is time to go hunt some ducks," he said. So he took his bow and arrows and got into his canoe. He began to paddle out into the bay, and as he paddled, he sang. And I'm sorry, I don't have like a meter or anything here, so I'm just gonna read out the words as lyrically as possible. Kiowa jine, yo hey, yo hey. Kiowa jine, Kiowa jine. But a wind came up and it turned his canoe and blew him back to shore. Once again, Glooskabi began to paddle out, and this time he sang a little harder. Kiowa jine, yo hey, yo hey. Kiowa jine, Kiowa jine. But again, the wind came and blew him back to shore. 4 times he tried to paddle out into the bay, and 4 times he failed. He was not happy. He went back to the lodge of his grandmother and walked right in, even though there was a stick leaning across the door, which meant that the person inside was doing some work and did not want to be disturbed. "Grandmother," Glooskabi asked, "what makes the wind blow?" Grandmother Woodchuck looked up from her work. "Glooskabi," she said, "why do you want to know?" Then Glooskabi answered her just as every child in the world does when they are asked such a question. "Because," he said. Grandmother Woodchuck looked at him. "Ah, Glooskabi," she said, "whenever you ask such questions, I fear there's going to be trouble, and perhaps I should not tell you. But I know that you're very stubborn and would never stop asking. So I shall tell you. If you walk always facing the wind, you will come to the place where Wuchhausen stands." "Thank you, grandmother," said Glooskabi. He stepped out of the lodge and faced into the wind and began to walk. He walked across the fields and through the woods, and the wind blew hard. He walked through the valleys and into the hills, and the wind blew harder still. He came to the foothills and began to climb, and the wind still blew harder. Now the foothills were becoming mountains, and the wind were very strong. Soon there were no longer any trees, and the wind was very, very strong. The wind was so strong it blew off Glooskabi's moccasins, but he was very stubborn, and he kept on walking, leaning into the wind. Now the wind was so strong it blew off his shirt, but he kept on walking. Now the wind was so strong it blew off all his clothes, and he was naked, but he still kept walking. Now the wind was so strong that it blew off his hair. But Glooskabi still kept walking, facing into the wind. The wind was so strong it blew off his eyebrows, but he still continued to walk. Now the wind was so strong he could hardly stand. He had to pull himself along by grabbing hold of the boulders. But there, on the peak ahead of him, he could see a great bird flapping its wings. It was Wachausen, the wind eagle. Glooskabe took a deep breath.
"Grandfather!"
he shouted. The wind eagle stopped flapping his wings and looked around.
"Who calls me grandfather?"
he said. Glooskabe stood up.
"It's me, grandfather. I came up here to tell you you do a very good job making the wind blow."
The wind eagle puffed out his chest with pride.
"You mean like this?"
he said, and flapped his wings even harder. The wind he made was so strong it lifted Glooskabe right off his feet, and he would have been blown right off the mountain had he not reached out and grabbed a boulder again.
"Grandfather!"
Glooskabe shouted again. The wind eagle stopped flapping his wings.
"Yes?"
he said. Glooskabe stood up and came closer to Wachausen.
"You do a very good job of making the wind blow, grandfather, this is so. But it seems to me you could do an even better job if you were on that peak over there."
The wind eagle looked over toward the other peak.
"That may be so,"
he said.
"but how would I get from here to there?"
Glooskabe smiled.
"Grandfather,"
he said,
"I will carry you. Wait here."
Then Glooskabe ran back down the mountain until he came to a big basswood tree. He stripped off the outer bark, and from the inner bark he braided a strong carrying strap, which he took back up the mountain to the wind eagle.
"Here, grandfather," he said, "let me wrap this around you so I can lift you more easily."
Then he wrapped the carrying strap so tightly around Wachausen his wings were pulled into his sides and he could hardly breathe.
"Now, grandfather," said Glooskabe, picking the wind eagle up, "I will take you to a better place."
He began to walk toward the other peak, but as he walked he came to a place where there was a large crevice, and as he stepped over it he let go of the carrying strap and the wind eagle slid down into the crevice, upside down, and was stuck.
"Now," Glooskabe said, "it is time to go hunt some ducks."
He walked back down the mountain and there was no wind at all. He waited till he came to the tree line and still no wind blew. He walked down to the foothills and down to the hills and the valleys and still there was no wind. He walked through the forest and the fields and the wind did not blow at all. He walked and walked until he got back to the lodge by the water, and by now all his hair had grown back. He put on some fine new clothing and a new pair of moccasins and took his bow and arrows and went back to the bay and climbed into his boat to hunt ducks. He paddled out into the water and sang his canoeing song.
Kiowa jine, yo hey, yo hey. Kiowa jine, Kiowa jine.
But the air was very hot and still, and he began to sweat. The air was so still and hot that it was hard to breathe. Soon the water began to grow dirty and smell bad, and there was so much foam on the water he could hardly paddle. He was not pleased at all, and he returned to the shore and went straight to his grandmother's lodge and walked in.
"Grandmother," he said, "what is wrong? The air is hot and still, and it is making me sweat, and it's hard to breathe. The water is dirty and covered with foam. I cannot hunt ducks at all like this."
Grandmother Woodchuck looked up at Glooskabe. "Glooskabe," she said, "what have you done now?" And Glooskabe answered just as every child in the world answers when asked that question.
"Oh, nothing,"
he said. "Glooskabe," said Grandmother Woodchuck again, "tell me what you have done." Then Glooskabe told her about going to visit the wind eagle and what he had done to stop the wind. "Oh, Glooskabe," said Grandmother Woodchuck, "will you never learn? Tobbledack, the owner, set the wind eagle on that mountain to make the wind because we need the wind. The wind keeps the air cool and clean. The wind brings the clouds that gives us rain to wash the earth. The wind moves the waters to keep them fresh and sweet. Without the wind, life will not be good for us, for our children, or our children's children. Gluskabi nodded his head.
Kamoji, grandmother, he said. I understand.
Then he went outside. He faced in the direction from which the wind had once come and began to walk. He walked through the fields and through the forest, and the wind did not blow, and he felt very hot. He walked through the valleys and up the hills, and there was no wind, and it was very hard for him to breathe. He came to the foothills and began to climb, and it was very hot and sweaty indeed. At last he came to the mountain where the wind eagle once stood, and he went and looked down into the crevice. There was Wuchowsen, the wind eagle, wedged upside down.
Uncle?
Gluskabi called. The wind eagle looked up as best he could.
Who calls me uncle? He said. It is Gluskabi, uncle. I'm up here. But what are you doing down there?
Oh, Gluskabi, said the wind eagle.
A very ugly naked man with no hair told me he would pick me to the other peak so I could do a better job of making the wind blow. He tied my wings and picked me up, but as he stepped over this crevice, he dropped me in, and I am stuck. And I'm not comfortable here at all. Uncle, I will get you out.
Then Gluskabi climbed down into the crevice. He pulled the wind eagle free and placed him back on the mountain and untied his wings.
Uncle, Gluskabi said, it is good that the wind should blow sometimes, and other times it is good that it should be still.
The wind eagle looked at Gluskabi and then nodded his head.
Grandson, he said, I hear what you say.
So it is that sometimes there is wind, and sometimes it is very still to this day. And so the story goes. I like that. It's definitely one of those like stories used to tell children to explain some things about the world, but also I like that bit at the end where the wind eagle knows who he is. He knows his ass. Like, I see you there, grandson. You jackass. Let's see. Damn, his hair grows back so fast. Yeah, I was like, it seems like he walked a while, but still, if all his hair was blown off, how the hell? Okay. Let's see. We have a few more. Let's see. Ooh, a couple of these are a little bit beefier, and then a couple of these are pretty short, so it bounces. Cool. This one is called Gluskob Changes Maple Syrup. So again, a slight variation of his name. Long ago, the Creator made and gave many gifts to man to help him during his life. The Creator made the lives of the Abenaki people very good, with plenty of food to gather, grow, and hunt. The maple tree at that time was one of these very wonderful and special gifts from the Creator. The sap was as thick and sweet as honey. All you had to do was to break the end off of a branch and the syrup would flow out. In these days, Gluskob would go from native village to village to keep an eye on the people for the Creator. One day Gluskob came to an abandoned village. The village was in disrepair, the fields were overgrown, and the fires had gone cold. He wondered what had happened to the people. He looked around and around until he heard a strange sound. As he went towards the sound, he could tell it was the sound of many people moaning. The moaning did not sound like people in pain, but more like the sound of contentment. As he got closer, he saw a large stand of beautiful maple trees. As he got closer still, he saw that all the people were lying on their backs under the trees, with the end of a branch broken off, dripping maple syrup into their mouths. The maple syrup had fattened them up so much and made them so lazy that they could barely move. Glooskab told them to get up and go back to their village to rekindle the fires and repair the village. But the people did not listen. They told him they were content to lie there and to enjoy the maple syrup. When Glooskab reported this to the Creator, it was decided that it was again time that man needed another lesson to understand the Creator's ways. The Creator instructed Glooskab to fill the maple trees with water. So Glooskab made a large bucket from birch bark and went to the river to get water. He added water and added more water until the sap was that like water. Some say he added a measure of water for each day between moons, or nearly 30 times what it was as thick syrup. After a while, the people began to get up because the sap was no longer so thick and sweet. They asked Glooskab, "Where has our sweet drink gone?" He told them this was the way it will be from now on. Glooskab told them if they wanted the syrup again, they would have to work hard to get it. The sap would flow sweet only once a year, before the new year of spring. The people were shown that making syrup would take much work. Birch bark buckets would need to be made to collect the sap. Wood would be needed to be gathered to make fires to heat rocks, and the rocks would be needed to be put into the sap to boil the water out to make the thick sweet syrup that they were once so fond of. He also told them that they could get the sap for only a short time each year, so they would remember the error of their ways. And so it is still to this day. Each spring, the Abenaki people remember Glooskab's lesson in honoring the Creator's gifts and work hard to gather the maple syrup that they love so much. And that's the end of that story. So that's how they get maple syrup. Yeah. How come we only have maple syrup like a few times a year? Well, you see, once upon a time. Not glue sky. Not a nice not trolling guy. I I think I think he was still trolling a little, but trolling for like a different a more um what do you call it? More outwardly good reason. Like he was very kind of obtuse in the first instance we see him as a troll. Then he was a bit more selfish in the second one. In this one, he was more outwardly like there was more clearly a reason for his it's like yeah. This must have been his twin brother. Yeah, it's not Glooscap, it's not Glooscabby. It's Gluescape. So, you know, it's all the same guy. Anyway, this one is called How Glooskap Created Sugarloaf Mountain. A long time ago, the people used to live near the river banks in the summertime, and they could watch all the salmon going up the river to spawn. One day, they noticed the salmon could not get up the river anymore. Remember, in those days, the beaver were very, very big, and they had built a dam across the Restigouche River. That is why the salmon could not get up the river to spawn. The people were very upset indeed, because they knew if the salmon could not get up the river to have their babies, there would be no more salmon, and they would have none for food in the winter. So they held a council with all the people. They said they didn't want to rely on Glooskap. They decided they would go out in their canoes and fight the beavers. The men got in their canoes, but when they got close to the beavers, they splashed the water with their huge tails. The canoes and the men went flying up into the air and fell into the water. They could not get past the beavers in order to destroy the dam. The beavers were just too big. So they swam ashore and they reconsidered calling Glooskap. At the time, Loon was Glooskap's messenger. They asked Loon to call him. Loon made his wailing sound and called Glooskap. It was carried across the water to Glooskap, and our friend soon came riding on the back of his whale. Glooskap asked them, "Why did you call me?" They told him about the beavers and how they had made a dam all the way across the river and how the salmon could no longer get up the river to spawn. They say they will not have any more salmon to eat if they can't get up the river and have their babies. So Glooskap walked into the middle of the dam and hit it with his club. When he hit the dam, parts of it flew away. One of these parts became an island. It is now called Heron Island. Another part that flew away is now called Bantry Point. Glooskap caught the leader of the beavers and swung him around and around by his tail. When Glooskap let go, the beaver landed many miles away and turned into a rock. Today, that rock is called Sugarloaf Mountain. Glooskap then turned to the other beavers. They were afraid, so instead he stroked their heads, and with each stroke they became smaller and smaller until they reached the size that they are today. Glooskap promised the people that the beavers in New Brunswick would never grow that big again. The beavers will not build a dam so big it stops salmon from getting through, and they will never have to worry about that problem again. The end. That one's so funny. What the hell? We're not gonna call Glooskap. We'll handle this ourselves. Let's go kick some beaver's ass. Damn, beaver got hands. And apparently the beavers were fucking massive. I actually have to wonder, like, were beavers bigger? Ancient beavers. Ancient giant beaver? That's an autocomplete? Please tell me this is real. Oh my god. Wikipedia. Casteroids. From Latin castor, beaver, and oids, like, or the giant beaver is an extinct genus of enormous bear-sized beavers that lived in North America during the Pleistocene, which is up to about 11,000 years ago. Two species are currently recognized. Casteroids dilophodus in the southeast US and Casteroids ohioensis in most of North America. Casteroids lacerium was previously described from the Irvingtonian age but now regarded as invalid. Okay.
So there's two types, one in the southeast U.S. and the one in most of North America. Castoroids were much larger than modern beavers. Their average length was approximately 1.9 meters or 6.2 feet, and they could grow as large as 2.2 meters or 7.2 feet. Holy shit! That was a real thing! Little is there's a section called interaction with humans. Little is known for certain about human interactions with castoroids. Remains of castoroids are found along human artifacts in Sheridan Cave. Differing scientific theories exist considering whether the extinction of castoroids was caused by hunting by the early human arrivals in the Americas. First Nations people such as the Innu and Mississaugas feature giant beaver in their traditional mythology, which some members of these nations believe is evidence of human interactions with them. In 1972, American ethnologist Jane Beck hypothesized that Castoroid's ohioensis was the basis of an Algonquin myth where a gargantuan beaver created a dam so high on the St. John River that the lake behind it almost reached the sea. The dam was struck down by the Wabanaki heroic figure Glooskap, creating the reversing falls. Glooskap chased the monster upstream, creating several islands in the river while attempting to strike the beaver through the ice. The beaver constructed another dam, which created the Great Lakes and fled through these to the lands beyond. There's another variation of this myth? Holy shit! Several versions of an Anishinaabe story tell of giant beavers who walked upright and stood as tall as the tallest man. Many scholars believe that stories like these could be evidence of the oral tradition of North American First Nations peoples encountering Castoroids ohioensis, or at the very least their fossils. And in 2025, the species Castoroids ohioensis became the official state fossil of Minnesota. Wait, what? Minnesota? It has Ohioensis in its name. This gets crazier. Giant bear-sized beavers building dams so big the salmon cannot cross. Holy shit. I cannot believe that I can believe because yeah, obviously these stories come from somewhere, but wow, talk about learning something new every day. Giant bear-sized beavers. Holy crap. Wow. Shout out to Shout outs to my guy Glooscap for shrinking the giant beavers into their normal sizes today. He just threw one, or in some cases, chased it out of town, and then the others were scared, so he just gave them head pats until they turned into small beaver. Amazing. No notes, that was perfect. Okay, we have four more stories. Two of them are pretty short, and two of them are a little longer, so um, I'll read them in alternating lengths. This one is called The Strange Origin of Corn. A long time ago, when the people were first made, one man lived alone, far from any others. He did not know fire, and so he lived on roots, bark, and nuts.
This man became very lonely for companionship. He grew tired of digging roots, lost his appetite, and for several days lay dreaming in the sunshine. When he awoke, he saw someone standing near and at first was very frightened. But when he heard the stranger's voice, his heart was glad and he looked up. He saw a beautiful woman with long, light hair. "Come to me," he whispered, but she did not, and when he tried to approach her, she moved farther away. He sang to her about his loneliness and begged her not to leave him. At last she replied, "If you will do exactly what I tell you to do, I will also be with you." He promised that he would try his very best, so she led him to a place where there was some very dry grass. "Now get 2 dry sticks," she told him, "and rub them together fast while you hold them in the grass." Soon a spark flew out, the grass caught fire, and as swiftly as the arrow takes flight, the ground was burnt over. Then the beautiful woman spoke again. "When the sun sets, take me by the hair and drag me over the burned ground."
"Oh, I don't want to do that,"
the man exclaimed. "You must do what I tell you to do," she said. "Wherever you drag me, something like grass will spring up, and you will see something like hair from between the leaves. Soon, seeds will be ready for your use." The man followed the beautiful woman's orders, and when we see silk on the cornstalk, we know that the beautiful woman has not forgotten us. And that's the end of that one. Strange indeed. I guess that's one way to explain why cornstalks have the stringy like hair like texture on them. Hi, do you mind? I don't know if my mic picked that up. Let me know if you heard that. Corn lady defeats male loneliness. Weaponized incompetence in a single night. Don't think it did? Oh, okay. Um my my cat walked right up right next to me and just meowed loudly for attention, so I thought it might have been picked up by the microphone. Yeah, he's a little guy. Oh, you heard it? Hi, Fiscatos. How are you doing? It's good to see you. Okay, so we're down to 3 more stories. So I'm gonna read one of the longer ones. This one is called uh, Uchigas and the Invisible Boy. There was once a Malasite village on the edge of a lake in the land of the Wabanaki, and in this village lived 3 sisters. The 2 older girls, Una and Abit, were handsome and proud, but the youngest, whom they called Uchigas, was timid and plain. She suffered much from the selfishness of her sisters, but bore all their ill treatment without complaint. Because these girls had no parents, they were given meat by the tribe's hunters in return for making pottery. Through much practice, they had become the best makers of pots in the village, and this is how they made them. First, Una, the eldest, wove a basket from ash splints, Then Abit lined it with wet clay. Finally, it was given to the youngest girl to harden in the fire. As the clay slowly baked, the wind blew the fire into Uchiga's face, and in time her hair was singed close to her head and her face covered with burns. Oh! Oh, I'm sorry. Pause real quick. I think I know this one. Oh my gosh. I think I read like a small like children's book, an illustrated story about this one as a kid. Oh, this is a throwback for me. Okay, okay. I'm sorry. I'm gonna calm down real quick. I'm gonna read. Okay, okay. Sorry, it's just. Oh, okay. Okay, so hair was singed close to her head, face covered with burns. Okay, and that is why her sisters mocked her with the name of Uchigas, which means little scarred one. Now Glooskap, the great chief, knew all his people. He saw the misery of Uchigas and pitied her, and he scowled at the cruelty of her sisters. Yet he did nothing. And this was something that Marten, his servant, could not understand.
My elder brother, said Martin. Though she is plain, her heart is kind. Can you not help her? We will see, said the great chief with a wise nod. Uchigas must help herself first. Kindness is a great virtue, but courage is the first rule of my people.
Now, on the far side of the lake, remote from the village, there lived a youth called Tim, who had the wonderful power of making himself invisible. To all save his sister, he was as the rustle of a leaf in the forest, a sigh of wind in the treetops, or a breath of air in the heavens. His name meant moose, and the moose was his totem or charm that gave him his power. Having this magical power, Tim needed no bow and arrow. He could walk straight up to game without being seen or heard and slay it with bare hands. One day, Tim's sister appeared in the village. "My brother is tired of living alone," she said to the people. "Tim will marry the first girl who's able to see him." Now, though no person had seen Tim or knew if he was tall or short, fat or thin, plain or handsome, they knew of his magic power and his success as a hunter. To the people who live by hunting, a brave who can keep meat in the lodge all the time is admired above all else. He's a kind of prince. It is no wonder that every maiden in the village yearned to become the bride of the invisible boy. All of the unmarried maidens were eager to try their fortune, and one after another, each made a visit to the lodge across the lake. And one after another, each came back disappointed. At last, all had made the attempt, except the three sisters. "Now it is my turn," said Una. "I'm sure I shall be able to see him." "You indeed," sniffed Abit. "I'm as likely to see him as you are. Why should you go first? I am the eldest. Tim is sure to want a younger woman." The two sisters glared at each other. "You needn't think I shall let you go alone," declared Una angrily. "Then we'll go together," said Abit, and so they did. Dressing themselves in their finest robes, they set off for the lodge across the lake. Tim's sister received them kindly and took them to the wigwam to rest after their journey. Then, when it was time for her brother's return, she led them to the shore. "Do you see my brother?" she asked. The two girls gazed eagerly out over the lake. They saw a canoe approaching, but though it moved swiftly through the water, it appeared to be empty. No paddle could be seen, for whatever Tim held or wore also became invisible. Abit thought to herself that she would pretend to see him, and Tim's sister would never know the difference. "I see him!" she cried, and Una, not to be outdone, echoed, "Yes, I see him too." Tim's sister knew that at least one of the girls lied, for only one maiden would be allowed to see her brother, and that would be his future bride. "Of what is his shoulder strap made?" she asked. The two girls thought for a moment. They knew that, generally, their people used rawhide or withe for their shoulder straps. "A strip of rawhide?" guessed Abit. No, Wythe! Cried Una. Then Tim's sister knew that neither had seen her brother, and she resolved to punish them for their dishonesty. Very well, she said quietly. Come to the wigwam and help me prepare my brother's supper. The two girls were anxious to know which of them had given the correct answer, so they followed Tem's sister and helped her prepare the meal. Each hoped that she alone would see Tem when he came. When all was ready, the sister of Tem warned the girls not to sit in her brother's place, but to remain on her side of the fire. Then, looking up, she greeted her brother, but the girls could see no one. Take my brother's load of meat, she told Abit, who looked around her in dismay. As long as the meat was on Tem's shoulder, it could not be seen. Suddenly, a great load of venison dropped from nowhere on Abit's toes. Abit screamed and ran from the lodge in pain and fright. Now Tem's sister told Una to remove her brother's wet moccasins and put them to dry. Of course Una could not do so. A pair of wet moccasins came suddenly sailing through the air and slapped her across the face. Then Una too ran away, crying with mortification. My bride is a long time coming, sighed Tim, and those were very fine-looking girls. Patience, my brother. You must have one who is brave and truthful, as well as lovely, and such a one has not come yet. Abit and Una returned home to vent their rage and spite on poor Uchigas. To escape their cruelty, she fled to the woods and there, in a secluded spot, relieved her heart with tears. But when there were no tears left, and her spirit had been calmed by the peace of the forest, Uchigas began to think. Now that her sisters had failed, she was the only maid left in the village who had not tried to see the invisible boy. Yet if her fine sisters had failed, what chance had she, poor and plain as she was? A great hunter like Tem would not wish a scar-faced girl like Uchiga's for a bride. All the same, hope stirred in her breast. Her heart began to beat fast at the thought of going to Tem's lodge. She had no fine clothes to wear. Her sisters might try to stop her. The people would laugh. It would take courage. Her mind was made up. Uchiga's gathered sheets of birch bark and cut out a gown and cap and leggings, and sewed them together with grass. The clothing was stiff and awkward, and it crackled when she walked, but it covered her. Then she went home and found a pair of Una's discarded moccasins. They were huge on her small feet, and she had to tie them on by winding the strings around her ankles. She was truly an odd-looking sight, and her two sisters stared at her in amazement. Where are you going in that ridiculous outfit? Una asked. I am going to Tem's lodge, answered Uchigas. What? You foolish girl! Come back! Oh, let her go, said Abit. Let the people see her, and she'll come back soon enough in tears. Uchigas's way lay through the village, and the men and the boys shouted and jeered at her.
Shame, shame, ugly creature. See how her burned hair sticks out from her cap? Why does she wear birch bark instead of skins? Come back, Uchigas. Where do you think you're going? To see Tem?
And they laughed so hard they rolled on the ground. But though her heart burned with shame, Uchigas pretended not to hear, and walked on with her head high until she was out of sight. Then she hurried through the woods and around the edge of the lake, trying not to think of the ordeal ahead. Doubtless, Tem's sister would laugh at her too. Still, she went on, and came at last to the lodge and saw Tem's sister at the door. I have come, gasped Uchigas before the other could speak. I have come to see Tem, if I can. And she looked pleadingly at Tem's sister. Come in and rest, said the sister of Tem gently, and Uchigas nearly wept at the unexpected kindness, but she managed to retain her dignity as they waited in silence for the sun to go down. Then Tem's sister led her to the lake. Do you see my brother? She asked. Uchigas looked and saw a canoe empty. She heard the dip of a paddle and the swish of water at the bow, but though she gazed with all her might, she saw no one. She whispered with a sinking heart, No, I cannot see him. Look again, urged Tem's sister out of pity, and because the girl had so far been truthful, Ochiga's look gazed once more at the canoe and suddenly gave a gasp. Oh, yes, now I see him. If you see him, said Tem's sister quickly, of what is his shoulder strap made? It is made of a rainbow, marveled Uchiga's, and Tem's sister knew her brother had found his bride. She led the girl back to the wigwam and stripped off her ugly clothes, bathed her, and dressed her in doe skin, and gave her a comb to tidy her hair. Alas, thought Uchigas, I have so little hair to comb. But as she drew the comb against her head, she found to her amazement her hair had grown suddenly long and thick. Moreover, the scars had gone from her face. Then the handsome Tem came, laughing, and cried out, At last I've found you, my lovely bride! And he led her to the wife's place in the wigwam, and from that day on, Uchigas and Tem's sister, lived out their days in peace and happiness. Far away on Blomidon, Glooskap looked at Martin with a wise smile. He had known all along, you see, that Uchigas had courage under her gentleness, and a brave spirit makes all things possible. So it goes. Yeah, I've definitely read this one before. I was like, this one sounds familiar, but I don't want to like make any assumptions. And then I saw that she had like the burn scar specifically. I'm like, that's the one. That's the story. Holy crap. I read this one so much as a kid because there was a cool like illustrated version, and I used to love looking at the pictures so much. Let me see if I can still find that book. Ah, maybe it was titled something different in the book that I was. Let's see. Because I know I've seen this before. Where is it? I'm gonna find this later, and then I'll make a post showing it. But I know I'm gonna find this because this book existed. It definitely existed. Not necessarily a fan of the whole like scar erasing to like, you know, it's kind of the falls into the whole like, oh, now she's pretty or something, but like, you know, it's a fairy tale, come on. Okay, this one is called The Story of the Drum, and this is the last of the short ones, and then we have one more long one and we'll be done. um the Story of the Drum. It is said that when Creator was giving a place for all spirits to dwell who would be taking part in the inhabitants of Mother Earth, there came a sound, a loud boom from off in the distance. As Creator listened, the sound kept coming in closer and closer until it was finally right in front of Creator. Who are you? Asked Creator. I am the spirit of the drum, was the reply. I have come here to ask you to allow me to take part in this wonderful thing. How will you take part? Creator questioned. I would like to accompany the singing of the people. When they sing from their hearts, I too will sing as though I was the heartbeat of Mother Earth. In that way, all creation will sing in harmony. Creator granted this request, and from then on, the drum accompanied the people's voices. Throughout all indigenous peoples of the world, the drum is at the center of all songs. It is the catalyst for the spirit of the songs to rise up to Creator so that the prayers in those songs reach where they need to go. At all times, the sound of the drum brings completeness, awe, excitement, solemnity, strength, courage, and fulfillment to the song. It is Mother's heartbeat giving her approval to those living upon her. It draws the eagle to it, who carries the message to Creator. It changes lives. And that's the story of the drum. Fair enough. I mean, strictly speaking, after singing, I'm pretty sure the first instrument people figured out was hitting things makes good sounds. And so from then on, we sought to find the best thing to hit to make the best sound. Literally lithophones? Is that lithophone? Musical instrument consisting of a rock or pieces of a rock which are struck to produce musical notes. Oh, that's cool. It is an idiophone comparable to instruments such as the glockenspiel, vibraphone, xylophone, and marimba. Oh. An older form called the rock gong. Wow, okay. Wow. Well, there you go. You got rocks, you got music. So I guess the first genre of music was hard rock. dot 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 and then an angry face. Uh, uh, I mean, I'm not wrong. All right, all right. And this is the last story that we have on from this collection. Um, I'm sure there are more out there, but these are the ones that are recorded on this page. And I mean, obviously, definitely, if you're interested, I highly recommend other people. I highly recommend you seek out others wherever you can. I'm sure, um, for one thing, contrary to popular belief and popular, how to put it, despite how it's framed, a lot of these groups aren't gone. So I'm sure if you're able to find, a collection or some sort of, you know, other assortment of these stories, these folklores, definitely seek them out if you can. Like I said, this is just what I could find on this one page, which was archived on the Wayback Machine. But I'm sure if you look around, if you do a little digging, you'll probably be able to find a more direct source, and a more contemporary one. So you know, I highly recommend, if you enjoy the things that I read and you want to find more, obviously I'm never gonna not support that because um, reading's fun. And I would love if more people, in fact, were able to do so outside of listening to my streams because that's that's just a joy of mine, spreading the joy of reading, and it's at least a good part of why this channel exists. Okay. And lastly, this story, Rabbit Calls a Truce. In the long ago, when Glooskap ruled over the Wabanaki, there lived two lively animals, Kunik the otter and Obligumok the rabbit, who were forever playing tricks on each other. One day, when Kunik was in swimming, Obligumok ran off with a string of eels he had left on the shore. Kunik rushed out of the water and went in angry pursuit. He had no difficulty in tracking the rabbit, for the mark of the fish touching the ground between jumps clearly showed the way. He was astonished, however, when the trail ended at a clearing in the woods where a withered old woman sat by a small fire. Kwai no Nogume, said Kunik, using the formal address for an elderly female. Did you see a rabbit hopping this way, dragging a string of eels? Rabbit? Rabbit? Muttered the old woman. What kind of animal is that? The otter explained it was a small brown jumping creature with long ears and a short tail. I saw no such animal, the old squaw grumbled, but I'm glad you came along, for I'm cold and sick. Do please gather a little wood for my fire. Obligingly, Kunik went off to do so. Hi, Smoke. Welcome in. Or if you've been lurking for a bit, then hello. Returning with the wood, he stared around in surprise. The old woman was gone. On the spot where she had sat, he saw the mark of a rabbit's haunches and familiar paw prints leading away to the woods. Then he remembered that Obligamuk was very clever at changing his appearance and fooling people. I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause real quick and just be like, what in the Bugs Bunny? Which I'm sure probably comes from stories like this, but okay, continuing. Oh, that miserable rabbit! Cried Kunik and set off again on the trail. This time the tracks led straight to a village of the Penobscot people, where Kunik could see the rabbit in conversation with a thin, sad man wearing the feather of a chief in his hairstring. The wily otter cut himself a stout stick and waited behind a tree. Presently Obligamuk came strolling down the path, his face creased in an absent-minded frown. Kunik was ready for him. He brought the stick down on the rabbit's head with a thud, and Obligamuk collapsed on the grass. That should teach him, thought Kunik with satisfaction, and he sat down to wait for the rabbit to recover. Presently Obligamuk came to his senses and staggered to his feet with a dazed expression. What did you do with my eels? Demanded Kunik. I gave them to the people, muttered the rabbit, exploring the bump on his head with a groan. What'd you do that for, you silly creature? Those Penobscots are starving, Kunik, said the rabbit. For many moons, someone has been stealing their food. Just the same, grumbled Kunik. Those were my eels. The rabbit thumped his hind legs on the ground with an air of great determination. Kunik, we must find the robbers and punish them. We? Asked Kunik in astonishment. Yes, you and I, said his companion firmly. Let there be a truce between us until we discover the thieves. Kunik thought to himself that Obligamuk was a fine one to complain of people stealing other people's food. However, he too felt sorry for the Penobscots. All right, he agreed. We'll have a truce. And they shook hands solemnly. Then they started back to the village to ask the chief what they might do to help. But when they were still some way off, they saw two other animals talking to him. These were Uskus the weasel and Abukchik the mouse, two animals so troublesome even their own families would have nothing to do with them. "Let's listen," whispered Obligamuk, drawing Kunuk behind a tree.
"We'll find those robbers for you, Chief," they heard Uskus say. "Don't you worry about a thing."
"You can depend on us," chimed in Abukchik. Obligamuk nudged the otter. "Did you hear that?"
"I heard," said Kunuk. "So they don't need our help after all."
"I wonder," said the rabbit thoughtfully.
"What do you wonder, and why are we whispering?"
"Shh! Let's think about it a little, Kunuk. Have you any idea how those two get their living? They sleep all day and go hunting only after dark."
"Some of us like to hunt after dark,"
Kunuk said fairly. "Well, but listen," said the rabbit. "All the fur robes in the camp have been chewed and scratched and spoiled. What animals chew and scratch wherever they go?"
"Weasels and mice," answered Kunuk promptly. "Very well, let's follow them and see what happens."
So Kunuk and Obligamuk, keeping out of sight themselves, followed the weasel and the mouse a very long way, to a large burrow in the side of a hill where a number of other weasels and mice of bad repute were gathered. All greeted Uskus and Abukchik and listened to what they had to say, while the rabbit and otter, hidden behind a blueberry bush, listened too.
"We were very sympathetic," smirked Uskus, "and said we'd help them." "So now they won't suspect us," said Abukchik,
and all the mice and weasels chortled gleefully.
"It's time now," said Uskus, "to call all the animals together and plan the conquest of the Penobscots, for we are smarter than they, and deserve to have all the food for ourselves."
"Very true," all shouted.
"How will we get the rest to join us?"
asked Abukchik.
"The smaller ones will be afraid to say no to us," declared Uskus. "We'll use trickery on the others. We'll tell them the Penobscots plan to destroy all the animals in the land, and we must unite in order to defend ourselves."
"Then with Wolf and Bear and Moose to help us," cried Abenaki, "we'll soon have all the people at our mercy."
The otter and rabbit could hardly believe their ears. Someone must warn the tribe.
"Come on," whispered Kunuk,
but the rabbit only crouched where he was, tense and unmoving. Fact is, he wanted to sneeze. Obligamuk wanted to sneeze more than he ever wanted to sneeze in his life before, but he mustn't sneeze. The sound would give them away. So he tried and he tried and he tried to hold that sneeze back. He pressed his upper lip. He grew red in the face and his eyes watered. But it was no good. Ah! Achoo! Instantly, the weasels and mice pounced on Kunuk and Obligamuk and dragged them out of hiding.
"Spies!" growled Uskus.
"Kill them! Kill them!"
screamed Abukchik. "I have a better plan," said Uskus. "These two will be our first recruits."
Then he told the prisoners they must become members of his band or be killed. Poor Obligamuk, poor Kunuk. They did not wish to die, yet they could never do as the thieves wished. For the Penobscots were their friends. Obligamuk opened his mouth, meaning to defy the villains no matter what the consequence, and then his mouth snapped shut. He had heard a strange sound, the sound of a flute piping far away, and he knew what it was. It was the magic flute of Glooskap, and the great chief was sending him a message. Into the rabbit's head popped the memory of something Glooskap had said to him once, long ago, half in fun, half in earnest.
"Obligamuk," he seemed to hear the words again. "The best way to catch a snake is to think like a snake."
At once the rabbit understood. He set himself to think like the mice and the weasels, feeling the greed and selfishness that was in them. Then he had a plan. "Very well," he said. "We'll join you. Those people are certainly very cruel and dishonest. They deserve the worst that can happen to them. Why, only yesterday," and here he gave Kunuk a secret nudge, "my friend and I saw them hide away a great store of food in a secret place. Didn't we, Kunuk?"
"Oh, yes, certainly," stammered Kunuk, wondering what trick the rabbit was up to now. The weasels and mice jumped about in mad excitement. Where is this place? Take us there at once, cried Ascoose, licking his lips. Certainly, said Obligamook, starting old towards the woods. Just follow us. Abukchik the mouse was right at their heels, but Ascoose soon shouldered him aside. Then each animal fought to be in front, and in this way all rushed through the forest, across the meadows, down into the valleys and over the hills, until at last, pushing and panting and grunting, they all reached the bottom of a grassy hill. Obligamook pointed to a pile of rocks at the top. You'll find the wealth you seek up there, he cried. Hurry, hurry! The best will go to those who get there first. Away they all went, each struggling to be the first. The rabbit and the otter stood aside and watched as the wild mob scrambled up the hill. Up and up until suddenly, too late to stop, they found themselves teetering on the edge of a cliff, with nothing in front of them but space and the sea far below. Those who were first tried to stop, but were pushed over by those crowding behind, and so, screaming with terror, down they all went headlong into the sea. Well, said Cunic, peering over the edge of the cliff with a shiver, their tribes are well rid of them. So are the Penobscots, said the rabbit, and now that together we have saved our friends from the mice and weasels, Cunic, let's go home together in peace as good neighbors should. I'm willing, said the otter, but he had no sooner taken a step than he sprawled on the ground. Obligamook had tripped him. That's for the knock on the head, the rabbit laughed and made for the woods. Picking himself up furiously, Cunic was after him, shouting, Just you wait till I catch you! I'll teach you to play tricks on me! Their truce was over. And Glooskap, looking down from Blomidon, laughed at their antics, for he knew that with all their mischief there was no greed or spite in the hearts of Cunic and Obligamook, against the people or against each other. Once more, Kespia Duskit. The story ends. If you'll permit me this one time. That's all, folks. That was a Looney Tunes ass episode right there. Oh, what a story to end on. I didn't even know about that one, and I was like, you know what? This one sounds like it's a little bit different from the others, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this one for last. And boy, am I glad I did, because that was hilarious. Hanna-Barbera looking asses. It had everything. This story had everything. This, I firmly believe, is a, like, formative step towards fucking writing Looney Tunes. Because what the hell? You even had a rabbit in there. Come on. A rabbit who even like changed appearance into a woman at one point. I mean, come on. The song is called "The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down." Fucking Glooskap watching everything on. I know, he's just watching an episode of Looney Tunes. So remember, kids, the next time you're laughing your ass off watching old episodes of Looney Tunes, in that moment, you are Glooskap, who so long ago watched the very same happen with real animals. So now we need a live action Looney Tunes with like, and I'm not saying live action like
people in suits. I'm saying like one of those movies where like those old movies in like the 90s or the 2000s, like Homeward Bound or whatever, where you have real animals and you have voice dubbing added to it. Or like Milo and Otis, I think that's another one. And just have an adventure and some slapstick in there and boom, you've got yourself a movie. Dr. Doolittle type shit. Ah, that was great. That was great. But yeah, that is all the Abenaki folklores that I have for you today. So, uh thank you all so much for listening. That was so much fun. Um I'm looking at the page right now because the page that I sent earlier that has the myths, which I'll send again so that way you guys can see it, or those who are late can see it. Um, this is just the A to B section of of the stories, and if you look a little further down, there is specifically a section on Algonquin legends, which is all the different tribes who spoke the same language, and there's just simply a note. There are a number of spellings on Glooscap, and if you look, there's so many stories that talk about Glooscap. So this guy is gonna keep showing up if we look for him. He is the recurring character. And I kind of love that. Actually, if I do a word search, so there's at least 10 matches when you search up the first few letters of his name. And I'm sure if you look up the other spellings, you'll find even more. So that's going to be really fun. So I'm looking forward to like just reading other stories and being like, hey, there he is. Glooscap summonable in Fate when? Honestly, we could make a freaking fan servant of that guy. Maybe we'd have to class him as like a ruler or something. But yeah, that was the assortment of Abenaki myths and legends and folklore, and I think that was a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for listening. Um, my next scheduled stream is Saturday. Saturday at the same usual starting time. Um, of 3 o'clock, I am going to be playing some retro games. We are going to take it all the way back. Um, we are going back to the NES era. The Nintendo Entertainment System, 8-bit gaming. Now, that's not technically all the way back because, there's Atari 2600, the Commodore 64, other stuff like that. So, definitely, it's not the first platform of gaming, but it is the first platform of console gaming. Well, no, that's also not correct. There were Pong consoles and other sorts of. Okay, so we're gonna go back to 8-bit gaming. Let's just call it that. We're going to go all the way back to 8-bit gaming, and we're going to basically work our way up, I think, where I think that's the idea I'm going to try to go for, is kind of work our way up from 8 to 16, 64, etc. If I really want I was experimenting with an idea in my head of essentially escalating the bit rates, and it just brought to my mind the the old angry video game nerd uh thing where he was talking about the Tiger Electronics wrist games. Because like he was doing like an exaggerated thing where he's like, oh, you if you play a Tiger wristwatch game, you're a real gamer. Consoles, the bit wars, 64 bits, 32 bits, 16 bits, 8 bits, 4 bits, 2 bits, 1 bit, half bit, quarter bit, the wrist game. I love that so much. That's one of like the evergreen segments from that guy in my head. So I had a similar idea. Since the theme here is falling back and doing retro gaming, we're gonna work our way up from 8 bits, not from the wrist game, from 8 bits up to could you imagine me trying to stream a freaking Tiger Electronic game? Like, yeah, do you want to see a freaking like pixelated digitized slideshow essentially? Not doing that. Not doing that. For one thing, getting that to even work with hand cam stream Tiger wrist game? Are you insane? Oh yeah, let me just get a webcam to set up hand streams and make my first hand cam stream a freaking wristwatch, a freaking Tiger wrist game stream. Why don't I just get the Tiger R Zone while we're at it and play like Tiger Virtual Boy style games? Jesus. There's probably straight up Flash game emulators. There probably. Actually, that would be awesome to find. There's so many games I'd like to go back and revisit on, like Super Mario Brothers crossover, or the various like zombie shooting games. Or the tower defense games. Ah, Armor games, we miss you. Anyway, so yeah, my next stream is gonna be retro gaming. I'm gonna play at least 2 NES titles. I will give today we have ping pong gameplay. This game is from the Stone Age. Jeez. But yeah, we're gonna do at least 2 NES titles, maybe more if time permits. And I will give you a clue as to the first one or to at least one of them that I will be playing. And that hint is as easy and as simple and as classic as time itself at this point. But up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start. So get ready, folks. We're going to have ourselves a blast this weekend. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all so much for being here, hanging out, listening, and just enjoying these stories with me. It was a lot of fun to read, and it was very wonderful to kind of get both to shine a light on and to experience firsthand these stories from these people. Um, and yeah, like I'm not even I'm not even what do you call it, part of these, I don't claim any heritage to this stuff, but it's just, as somebody who values and treasures stories and history and stuff, this was so much fun to connect with, and even more fun to find one that I had already read as a child and reconnect with that one. That was great. And then we ended with straight up Looney Tunes. That was awesome. I loved it. No notes. But I'll see you guys on Saturday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for your patience. And I, once again, from the bottom of my heart, humbly apologize for the late start today. So, with that in mind, Rainiacs, Langsters, make sure that you eat well, stay hydrated, and I mean this one, and this goes out to myself as much as it goes out to anyone else. Get lots of good rest. I learned that one the hard way. Get lots of good rest, because if you don't, you will, just not when you expect to. And the human adult needs at least 6 to 8 hours of unbroken quality sleep. So get that. No less than 6, but shoot for 7 or 8, because boy, you need that. Yeah. Note to myself. And of course, as always, still the most important reminder I have for you guys, and still the one that I love saying the most, don't forget, unshrimp yourselves. Have a radiant rest of your day, everyone, and I will see you on Saturday. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.